So we have more vocabulary that we need to go over and cover to go along with this lesson of congruent triangles, being able to map up corresponding parts of congruent triangles. All of this again is leading us to triangle proofs. So I have a foldable. So what I've done, and you can do this on your own, I have on the inside, I have a triangle here. And we're going to talk about what type of triangle this is. But on the inside, I've got this triangle. And then I've got this segment drawn down here. And on the inside, we're going to talk about symmetric property, the transitive or substitution property, and the reflexive property. Then also some of the other vocabulary we need to go over are included sides and included angles. So there's the inside of your foldable. And then fold in and fold in. You're going to put the exact same triangle on the outside. And so now let's talk about what we know about this triangle. So in this picture here, we are given that triangle ABD is an isosceles triangle. Okay, so again, isosceles, that's going to lead us to be able to draw a lot of conclusions. Also, and I know you can't really see it, so I'm going to have to add this on here. We're also told that AC is perpendicular to segment BD. So right here, I know you can't see it, but because of the doors that I've made, we have made a segment going from A to C. I'm going to add it so we can see it now. And it is still hard to see. But when my papers are completely shut, you can see it. So AC is perpendicular to BD. And then AC also bisects angle BAD. So, with that given information, let's talk about what we know. Let's start with the fact that we have an isosceles triangle. So, one thing I should have added into this information, if I know I have an isosceles triangle, then I have at least two congruent sides. So, in this picture, I should have added that AB is congruent to AD. So I'm going to mark that. I'm isosceles, so I have two congruent sides. So using the isosceles triangle theorem, which says if two sides are congruent, then your base angles are also congruent, then what that leads me to know is that angle B is congruent to angle D. And again, that is by my isosceles triangle theorem. So now, let's talk about perpendicular here. If AC is perpendicular to BD, then that means that I'm going to have right angles. So angle ACD is a right angle. And angle ACB is also a right angle. Sorry, ACB. ACD and ACB are right angles. Okay, and then now let's talk about bisects. So in one of the previous lessons, you learned that bisect means cuts in half. So what exactly is being cut in half? AC, this ray AC, is bisecting this angle. So this angle BAD is the angle that's being cut in half. All right? So, as we talked about in the last lesson, we know if that angle is being cut in half, then we're going to have congruent angles. So, with that being said, angle BAC is going to be congruent to angle DAC by the definition of bisect. So now, let's talk about our 6 corresponding congruent parts now that we've got this set up. So what are my corresponding angles? So now that we've got things mapped out, and now that we've got things identified going by our given, well, the first thing I'm going to say is that angle BAC is corresponding and congruent to angle DAC. Okay, so then now the next thing is angle B is corresponding and congruent to angle D. And then the last angle is our right angles, so angle ACB is corresponding and congruent to angle ACD. So there are our 3 corresponding mapping angles. So what about our sides? So side AB is corresponding and congruent to side AD. Side BC is going to be corresponding and congruent to side DC. And then last, well, AC, you see how they share the same side? AC is, of course, corresponding and congruent to AC. Okay, so again, another example of CPCTC, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, and we were able to do this using some of the facts that we know about isosceles triangle, perpendicular, and bisect. So now the next video you're going to watch is going to go over some more vocabulary, putting some titles and some definitions to some of these statements.